Hello, everyone. Let's go around the Big Ten here on December 26th, 2024. Hope everyone had a good Christmas. We're still recovering over here, so bear with us. A lot to talk about this week around the Big Ten. We've got some transfer portal talk. We're going to get to some bowl game talk, and we'll probably save the round 2 of the playoffs. We'll catch you guys up on that on Monday evening. We'll do a show Monday evening to catch everyone up on the playoff games and any other things we've missed here in tonight's episode. But we got a couple bowl games to cover and the transfer portal. So let's start with the transfer portal. Some pretty big news this week in the Big Ten or around the conference. Let's start with 2 individual moves that we both really liked. And we'll start with Justice Haynes to Michigan. The Alabama running back transfers to Michigan, was a former 5-star recruit, was in the Alabama running back rotation this year. Very highly touted player coming out of high school. A lot of talk, Ohio State was in there a little bit. We'll get into kind of that a little later, but it never came together with Ohio State. There were a lot of SEC schools involved, but Michigan kind of emerges here and wins the Justice Haynes sweepstakes. Given what they're losing in their backfield, the style of offense they play, this feels like a perfect fit and a really big pickup for Michigan.
I agree. I mean, it was just like you said, it was a little bit surprising just considering the fact that, the SEC schools and where he grew up. I completely agree. I think Justice Haynes, in terms of the style of offense that Michigan has shown, and I mean, let's not, think that they're gonna go completely crazy with a new offensive coordinator. It's going to always be, I think, as long as Sharon Moore is there, is going to be a heavy focus on the run. And so Justice Haynes, this is an opportunity for him to showcase his talents and get ready for the NFL with one more season.
Yeah, so he's draft eligible after next season. And so I'm guessing that was a big part of this. Like, Michigan's losing their top couple running backs. They've showed that they'll ride a 20, 25 carry guy per game if they've got a workhorse back. Some of the other schools he was looking at, I think, have historically been rotational backfields where you're going to be splitting carries two or three other guys. Again, style play, the Michigan's recent history on the offensive line. I think there was a lot of things that probably went into that for Justice Haynes. And again, that's a big win for Michigan. We're talking about, a SEC kid from the greater Atlanta area, and they were able to go in and win that battle. And again, if you look at kind of the goals of each of these two parties, I think it does make sense. We kind of went over what Michigan's losing, what they want to do offensively. And then if you're Justice Haynes, you have 2 years left, but like, this is your draft year coming up. If you can go in there and get 250 carries and rush for 1,200, 1,500 yards, and just have a big season, you can get off to the NFL and go get paid. So I think that made sense for both parties. He doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires in college. Very sparingly as a true freshman, a little bit more action this year as a sophomore. So he's a guy who is probably looking for that 1 year to just kind of propel him with the NFL scouts. So this makes sense for everybody and gives Michigan another piece as they are trying to rebuild off of a tough season coming off the national championship. But you start to add pieces here. Now, is Bryce Underwood going to start next year? Who knows? I would guess they're going to try and bring him along a little bit slowly, but you have to add pieces around him. You have to add pieces around whoever your quarterback's going to be and try and improve that offense. So I just think this is a really underrated pickup right now. I think, again, as they try and rebuild this offense after kind of a tough year, it's always going to be centered around the running backs, and this is one of the best ones on the market.
Yeah, without question. I mean, Michigan, it's not flashy, but it worked for them running the ball. Justice Haynes is going to be, like you said, probably the feature back. Now, Jordan Marshall is there, and I know that they were starting to use him more. The Wolverines, when I say they, were starting to use Jordan Marshall more at the end of the season, but by no means would it make sense for them to feel just completely comfortable having Jordan Marshall as the only back. They've shown an interest in splitting the carries, just like Ohio State. Like the idea of like kind of spreading the wealth at the running back position. So Justice Haynes, certainly, if not necessarily a starter, it wouldn't surprise me if he is definitely in the heavy rotation with Michigan in 2025.
Yeah, it would Look, I was a big Jordan Marshall guy when he was in high school, so I suspect he's going to be a really good player at Michigan. But ultimately, I think you are bringing in Haynes to be that guy for at least for next year, and kind of let Marshall be the complementary back, much like like a Donovan Edwards was to Blake Corum. So I think that's probably what they have in mind there, and so that's a really interesting tandem for them next year. Could very well be one of the very best tandems in the Big Ten. So that was big news for Michigan. Another pickup I really liked, this one might fly under the radar a little bit, is Northwestern picks up former SMU quarterback Preston Stone. Preston Stone started a bunch of games at SMU. I think he's thrown for like over 3,000 yards in his career at SMU. Did lose the starting quarterback job earlier this season at SMU, but is a guy who's had success there in the past. And as we've talked about with Northwestern, so much of what's held them back over the years seems to be the lack of a legitimate playmaker at quarterback. They've tried different things. They've tried like the under the radar, under recruited guys. They're kind of trying to find the diamond in the rough game manager types. That hasn't worked. They went big a couple years ago with Hunter Johnson from the transfer portal. Was a former 5-star prospect. Didn't work out at Clemson. Really didn't work out at Northwestern. They've tried a little bit of everything here. Preston Stone gives them some experience, some high level ability, potential. Was also a very highly rated kid coming out of high school. I don't know. Is this put Northwestern in the Big Ten championship mix? No, I don't think so. But they've just had such a hard time at quarterback recently, and this feels like a good fit. It feels like something that will at least move them from having one of the worst quarterback situations in the conference. Should move them up a few rungs.
Yeah, Northwestern is just very enigmatic team, and I'm not saying that in a condescending way, but the reality is it's like Northwestern. You kind of associate them with traditionally pretty strong defensive effort, that they are going to be focused on running the ball. And the one thing that when Northwestern has been good is usually when they've had good to above average quarterback play. And for whatever reason, like you said, Mark, I mean, when it comes, like the Hunter Johnson is the most prominent example of, okay, here's somebody who was highly touted. It didn't work out at Northwestern, but it's one of these things where when Northwestern is usually a bowl eligible team, and let's face it, when the reconfigured Big Ten, it's going to be extremely difficult for Northwestern to get back into Big Ten championship game levels, but they should be able to get to 6 wins, 7 wins, usually, even with their high academic standards. That the big issue is not having consistent quarterback play. So with Preston Stone, like you said, he has a previous starting experience at SMU. Maybe he will be able to come in, acclimate himself into Northwestern, and get Northwestern back into being a competitive team within the Big Ten.
Yeah, they've had good running backs. They've had solid offensive lines. They've had good defenses. They just really haven't been able to solve the quarterback riddle lately. And, it's not like historically they've needed a star. You look at someone like a Mike Kafka or a Trevor Siemian. These are guys who were just solid quarterbacks, and they were able to win a lot of games with guys like that because all the other pieces were there. And so this is an interesting get for me. Am I picking Northwestern like a top 3 or 4 team in the Big Ten next year because of this? No, but I think it gives them more viability in terms of being a bowl team, in terms of maybe creating a little bit of noise there. This is a program that's investing a lot of money right now in their football program. They've got a new stadium coming. They've got that beautiful practice facility along the lake there. And if they can generate a little bit of buzz, start winning some games, get into bowl games, maybe 7-8 win seasons type of stuff with what they're doing with the football program in terms of the investments, I think that can really, I think that's really going to help springboard them. But I think they know, hey, we're putting all this money into the facilities and everything else, but if we don't put a winning product on the field, it doesn't really matter. So this is a good step in the right direction. Preston Stone's a solid quarterback with some experience. He's, as funny as this may be to say, he's a much safer bet than Hunter Johnson was. Hunter Johnson was really a pretty big bust at Clemson when he transferred to Northwestern. We have some proof of concept with Preston Stone. I mean, he's played at a solid level at the higher levels of the Division I. So That was a nice pickup for Northwestern. I'll tell you what, though, one team had a week in the portal, and that was Ohio State. Chip, man, like all their needs almost just taken care of. They got the running back they were looking for in CJ Donaldson. They pick up a couple of offensive linemen. They add a tight end, one of the best available, and they add a defensive end. So these were all the things they were looking for. Chip, we'll go through these each quickly, but like, which of the guys they've landed recently do you think is the biggest impact guy for them among the five or so we're about to talk about?
Okay. I have to focus in on the two offensive linemen. I realize you just asked me for one, but I'm going to go with both offensive linemen. I'm going to cheat a little bit simply because with the offensive line, Justin Fry has been fairly or unfairly, he's been the target of a lot of the fans in terms of, oh, he can't recruit and this and that. One thing that I believe that Justin Fry does not get enough credit for is development. When it comes to the idea of Josh Simmons a few years ago, everyone was kind of, oh my gosh, they're getting this guy from San Diego State. And then lo and behold, Josh Simmons turned into a really good left tackle, and Ohio State truly felt his absence when he suffered that injury. So getting back to the two offensive linemen, I'm really excited simply because tackle is such a premium position. You see it within the transfer portal. And I realized that Ohio State fans were kind of wondering when was Ohio State going to land somebody. The fact that they landed two. Now, it remains to be seen. I'm gonna hold, in terms of hold back my judgment in the sense that I'm not necessarily penciling both of them in as starters, but the probability is that they are going to be given every opportunity to compete for starting positions at both the left and right tackle positions, which is extremely important, as we all know. So I'm just I would have to say that out of every player that was signed, the two offensive linemen, simply because of the need, the depth, the experience that both of them have, granted at different levels, it's going to, in 2025, the offensive line is going to turn over again. So yeah, I think both of these young men are going to get opportunity to compete and start on that offensive line.
Yeah. Philip Daniels at right tackle from Minnesota, Ethan Onianwa from Rice, probably the biggest fish they picked up. This was maybe one of the highest rated offensive tackles in the transfer portal. So those were two huge pickups for the Ohio State offensive line. They had CJ Donaldson from West Virginia, who's got over 2,000 rushing yards and 30 touchdowns in his career at West Virginia. And then they add Logan George, a defensive end from Idaho State, who had offers all over the country once he entered the portal: Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Wisconsin. There was a bunch of programs after him. So they add him for some defensive end depth. And then we can't forget about Max Clare, the Purdue tight end, who goes from Purdue to Ohio State. So tough situation at Purdue becomes tougher for Barry Odom as another one of his star players, another one of Purdue's star players takes off for another Big Ten program. But, Max Clare was a great pickup for Ohio State as well. And Max Clare was almost a bonus pickup for Ohio State. There was talk about possibly going to get a tight end, but they were only going to take a tight end that they felt was like a big time player, like a difference maker. They weren't so much going in there for a depth body like they might be at some other positions. So Max Clare, I think, we're talking about Ohio State's going to be breaking in a new quarterback next year. You're going to have Jeremiah Smith, you're going to have Carnell Tate, you're going to have Brandon Innes. Now you're going to have Max Clare. Whether it's Julian Sayin, Lincoln Keenholz, or even if they would go in the portal for something. Boy, that seems like, with the two new linemen as well, doesn't that seem like a really good way for Ohio State to kind of raise its floor for next year, when we're talking about like, oh, how are they going to drop off, and like how big of the drop off is going to be when they lose some of these guys on offense? And it's like, well, they've reloaded pretty nicely.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, Max Clare, I guess, I'm just going to say that, since we're recording this the day after Christmas, like this is kind of the extra the extra gift that you didn't anticipate, receiving, at least for me, because I know that when he entered the transfer portal, it was kind of okay, like Ohio State was in contact with him, but I genuinely thought, all right, he might be looking for an opportunity to go to a place where, the tight end is featured even more prominently than Ohio State. One thing I will say about Chip Kelly this year is that he has shown, maybe not necessarily to the extent of other offensive coordinators around the country, but he has shown a willingness to use multiple tight ends in a variety of different means. Not only is just glorified blockers either. So the fact that Max Clare has shown on the field, the fact that he's from Ohio, as you said, Ohio State's going to be breaking in a new quarterback. What better way to get that new quarterback, whoever it is, because that's going to be a quarterback competition. Whoever the starting quarterback in 2025, like you said, having experienced talent at the tight end position, as well as a ton of returning talent at the wide receiver position, it's just going to make that new quarterback just feel a lot more secure and steady in getting acclimated to the quarterback position.
Yeah, no question. I mean, Claire, he's got 2 years left. So that's an even bigger bonus for Ohio State. He's not necessarily a one-year rental, although he will be draft eligible, obviously. But 51 catches, 685 yards, 4 touchdowns. So a really big year for Purdue. So another great pickup for Ohio State, who, again, I think has been kind of the talk of the portal here this past week or so as they've started. It was like Oregon was the first week, and now like Ohio State. So it's like Big Ten is just like, we talk about Michigan getting Justice Haynes, Preston Stone, and Northwestern. Indiana's doing some nice things, which we can maybe get into on Monday's episode. See if they finalize some of the other whispers that are out there with them right now. But there's a lot of good going on right now in the Big Ten and the transfer portal. There's a lot of good going on in the Big Ten right now in the college football playoff. So the conference is on quite a run right now. So with that said, we'll get into some of the bowl games. We'll do the playoff games on Monday night, but there's some Big Ten related bowl games here starting this evening with Rutgers, Kansas State in the Rate Bowl. Kansas State without a couple of key players. DJ Giddens, their star running back, is out, and so is star cornerback Jacob Parrish. Both of those guys have opted to leave a year early for the NFL and will not be playing. Still, Kansas State's roughly like a 6.5-point favorite as we record this. Is that going to be enough for Rutgers, just the absences of those two? I mean, those are two good players. But is that going to be enough for Rutgers to win this game?
I don't think so. I think Rutgers I have tremendous amount of respect for Greg Schiano in terms of what he has done with Rutgers in the second tour of duty, so to speak, with the Scarlet Knights. But I think Rutgers, I mean, they'll be competitive. They're pretty solid on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively, they like to run the ball, which kind of makes it a little easier, I think, for Kansas State to just kind of focus in on, if not necessarily shutting it down completely, kind of trying to make Rutgers like a one-trick pony, so to speak. So I think Kansas State, if I was a gambling kind of person, I would feel comfortable with that 6.5-point spread. I think Kansas State will win this one.
And Kyle Monangai has opted out for Rutgers too.
There you go.
We can't forget that. That was actually he was a late scratch. That just kind of happened here in the last, may have gotten lost for some people in the Christmas shuffle because this just happened in the last day and a half, I think. So Kyle Monangai is out for Rutgers. I would argue that Kansas State's losing better players than Rutgers in the opt-out thing, but I don't know that, Monangai seems so important to what Rutgers does. And kind of my theory, this is before Monangai opted out. My theory with Rutgers and Kansas State was that Rutgers is really good at mucking it up with finesse teams. Like if you want to throw the ball, or if you want to kind of go out there and use speed and skill, Rutgers is really good at kind of forcing you into the trenches to play their game. But you can't do that with Kansas State because they like it. You can't ugly up a game with a team that likes it that way. So I think Kansas State has a little bit more talent. Avery Johnson thinks he's going to be a difference maker in this game. I think the line is just about perfect. I think Kansas State by a touchdown feels right to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So we got USC and Texas A&M are going to also see each other here. Was that tomorrow?
Yeah, on Friday night, a late. Well, let me rephrase that. A 10:30 kickoff Eastern time is late for some people. Like I volunteer myself. Like that's kind of, to stay up for the duration of that one, I don't think so. But yeah, that's when that one kicks off on Friday night.
Yep, and that'll be on ESPN in the Las Vegas Bowl. Chip, you go ahead, because I still trying to sort this one out with some of the portal entries and just the rosters that we're going to be seeing and just how weird. And both of these teams, I mean, Texas A&M is like USC East or whatever you want to, like. They're both programs that are just like, what? Why are they the way they are? So
okay, well, I mean, I like that. I had to stop for a second and think, okay, yeah, that's a very apropos way to describe Texas A&M, like a USC East. I never thought about it that way, but yeah, Texas A&M, I look at it, they're only a slight favorite, like 3.5. Again, both rosters are kind of in a state of turmoil. I'm going to go with Texas A&M here simply for the fact that I just think, on a previous show, we talked about the USC portal defections that we know about. The fact that the quarterback position is unsettled at USC. And again, I'm not trying to make it sound like that Texas A&M is this mountain of stability in comparison, but I just think that there's a lot of turmoil going on with Texas A&M, and the fact that I think with Mike Elko, this is his first year. I think it's more of, okay, we got year one behind us. We're getting used to the way that he likes to do things. This is going to be our program going forward. And let's not forget that Texas A&M, they were more into the SEC race going into the final week of the regular season, unlike USC, which, I mean, they had to scrape to get by for bowl eligibility. So I'm gonna say that Texas A&M wins this just based on just a multitude of factors. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any stretch. That 3.5 seems about right. Like, I think it'll be a close game, but I do like Texas A&M in this game on Friday night.
Yeah, I'm going to go A&M too. I think, like I said, both programs are just like, why aren't they better? Now, that's not Mike Elko's fault at A&M right now, obviously, but it is Lincoln Riley's fault at USC. So I think there's more unknown going into this game with USC. I think there's a little bit more of a known quantity with what Texas A&M is going to be putting on the field on Friday night than what USC is going to be putting onto the field. So I'll take the safe way out here and go Texas A&M as well. Loser of that game, like, I know it's just like a meaningless like Las Vegas Bowl thing, but like loser of that game is gonna have a very unhappy fan base this offseason.
Oh, they will. They will.
USC, but like that's like I think it's a great game, like in terms of like the intrigue of that, of just two underachieving programs. So that'll be fun. But that's not it. We got a bunch of good stuff here. We got Boston College and Nebraska from Yankee Stadium on Saturday at noon in the Pinstripe Bowl. That's another interesting game. Two programs trying to build something. Bill O'Brien versus Matt Rule, I think it's a good head coaching matchup. Nebraska's -4. They're right now, as of recording, they're a 4-point favorite in this game. Chip, how do you see that one playing out?
I like Nebraska to win this one, and I realize, all right, this is so far from when it comes to the glory days of Nebraska football. You think like 30 years ago when they were competing for national championships, how far that program fell, and the fact that they were able to get into a bowl game, just kind of that psychological hurdle. All right, they achieved that. I just like the fact that Dana Holgorsen is now on staff. I think Nebraska offensively, they're going to look at this game as an opportunity to kind of springboard into 2025. I do respect Bill O'Brien as a coach. I think he did a solid job, especially considering the circumstances, the fact that it was, so late last year with the way that he came into that head coaching position. So the fact that he got them to this bowl is a credit and a testament to not only him, but the players on that roster. But getting back to Nebraska, I think just the mere fact that for the first time in 8 years that this program is going to a bowl game, I think Nebraska, that they're really going to take this opportunity to use it as kind of as a springboard, like I said a moment ago, into 2025.
Yeah, I agree. I have Nebraska winning that game as well. I think they're going to appreciate this trip maybe a little more than most programs.
Yeah.
I think they've got something to really build on with their young core of players who are going to be playing this game and who are, again, going to be trying to springboard things into next year. Boston College, I mean, they're probably in a similar situation, but they've lost their quarterback this year. Castellanos is off to another. I think he transferred as well. He was injured and then transferred. So they've not really been the same team without him. And I think Nebraska is going to win. Maybe by a touchdown or so. I think 4 is kind of a weird number, but I've got Nebraska by a touchdown in that one. And then on Monday, December 30th at 2:30 on ESPN, we've got Iowa and Missouri in the Music City Bowl. Missouri currently a 3-point favorite. This one's a little more interesting for me than maybe it is for most. But Chip, I'll defer to you here quickly. Interesting contrast of styles here. Big Ten, SEC. We got a lot going on here.
Right. I mean, I think this is one of these things where Missouri kind of had, when I think back to last year at this time, they had the bowl game win over Ohio State. So I think in their mind, they were kind of, okay, we are poised for bigger and better things in 2024. And just by the simple fact that they're in this bowl game before New Year's Day just kind of speaks to the fact that it didn't necessarily work out. Iowa is one of these programs where it's just, okay, like it seemed like they were kind of this, in my estimation, a dark horse candidate for a college football playoff spot. And offensively, it just kind of seemed to kind of fizzle out for them. So I'm going with Missouri here. I'm not saying it's going to be necessarily, like a huge high scoring game for the Tigers, but the fact that Iowa, that Caleb Johnson declared for the NFL draft is weighing heavily in my belief that Iowa offensively is going to have a few more handicaps to have to deal with. So I'm going with Missouri here.
Yes, Caleb Johnson opting out for Iowa, Luther Burden out from Missouri. Both teams have had a few guys in the portal. I'm going to go a different direction here. I am going to pick Iowa in an ugly, 20-17 type game. Special teams will be big. This is kind of what I talked about with Rutgers and Kansas State, where Rutgers can't really draw Kansas State into their type of fight because Kansas State wants that type of fight. I think Iowa's going to draw Missouri in the ugly game that they don't want to be a part of. And I think Missouri doesn't want to be in this game anyway. I think when the season started, if you would have told the Missouri players are going to the Music City Bowl, that would have been just devastating for them. I think they really thought going into the year they were going to make the playoffs this year. And it just wasn't a good season for them. I do think Caleb Johnson is obviously a big loss for Iowa, but it's just kind of what they do. I feel like they'll be fine. I feel like it's just the running backs don't make Iowa's program. It's like Iowa's program kind of makes the running backs.
That's true. No, I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
I just think they're kind of replaceable in Iowa. I just think they kind of do what they do, and it's very running back friendly. And I think they'll be okay there. I just, Luther Burden out, the disappointment of this whole season for them. I think they got an offensive lineman out too that left for the draft. Yeah, I'm going to go Iowa in a super ugly, low-scoring game. I'm going to go with Iowa in a small upset. I think the contrast of styles will benefit Iowa. And this is just, I don't know. This is the type of game Kirk Ferentz wins. They have this okay season where, they probably lost a couple games you didn't expect them to, and they probably weren't as good as people thought they would be. But they go in and they just out physical some team in a mid-tier bowl game and frustrate them and pull off some ugly type of win. I think that's going to happen here.
Yeah, it'll be a nice, put it this way, it'll be a nice way to watch college football on Monday afternoon, because that's kind of that's where some of these, I know we just talked earlier about the other Big Ten games, but the fact that this is a Monday afternoon game, a bowl game, it's going to be interesting, right before the New Year's Eve. And like you said, we'll have another show talking about the college football playoff round 2 games.
Yes. So we will be back on Monday evening. We'll talk round 2 of the college football playoff, which has 2 games with Big Ten teams, but we'll talk about the other games as well.
Yep.
And then we're going to have a full slate of Big Ten bowl games on New Year's Eve, Alabama, Michigan, Louisville, Washington, South Carolina, Illinois. So we'll preview those games as well on Monday. And then we'll come back middle of next week with reaction to these games and the playoffs and the New Year's Day bowls, and kind of look ahead to the next round, as well as there will be a late bowl game, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. How can you miss that? That's Minnesota, Virginia Tech. And I know we're both very, very much hoping to watch PJ Fleck get a Duke's Mayo bath.
You got it.
We all deserve it. We just give us this win. Just football gods, give us this win. Let us see PJ Fleck take the Duke's Mayo bath.
You got it.
We will be back again on Monday evening to talk, again, playoffs, New Year's Eve bowls, and maybe even recap some of the stuff here we're about to watch over this weekend. But I hope everyone had a good Christmas, and we will talk to you in a few days.
Take care.